Good evening, everyone. For those of you who weren't at the dinner, my name is Alan Atkinson. I'm honored to be your MC for tonight's program. We welcome everyone to a wonderful evening to honor our Rabbi Stephen Lindemann. Quick reminder, if you haven't already done so, please turn off or silence your cell phones. If they're in the car, we'll give you the opportunity to go out and silence them. If they're at home. Very important announcement. There is a Cadillac, license plate K2C DML, 125,000 miles on the car. Your inspection sticker is overdue, but your motor is running. So if anyone has that car, please quietly go out, unless you're just looking for a quick exit, when the program is over. First, some acknowledgments. I would like to welcome, this is going to be long, Mayor Chuck Kahn, our past mayors, and TBS members, Bernie Platt, hold your applause, Art Simons, Susan Bass-Levin, Jewish Federation President Betty Adler, Kelman Brown Principal Emily Cook, Rabbi in resident at Kelman, Rabbi Micah and Deborah Lebin, Rabbi Krupnik and his wife Helene from Congregation Bethel, Rabbi Isaac Furman, also of Bethel, Rabbi Norton Shagel and his wife Bela, longtime friends of the rabbi, Jen Weiss, CEO of Jewish Federation of Southern New Jersey, and past TBS rabbis and their spouses, Rabbi Fred Benjamin and Allison Mahl, Rabbi Stephen and Jody Wernick, and Rabbi Joel Levinson and Leora Cohn, and also former mayor of Voorhees and now deputy mayor, Harry Platt. Now, I'm going to start with row 4. All of the above have told me that they will have lengthy comments tonight. Anyone who has plans for tomorrow morning or who have young sitters at the break, you might want to make arrangements. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't add 3 more acknowledgments of people who wanted to be here. Let's start with the first. Our governor, Chris Christie. Chris was on his way down 295. He got off at Route 70. When you get off at Route 70, the first light is Covered Bridge Road. Backed up. Bumper to bumper. Chuck Kahn, I know you're here because you're here for dinner. Sometimes you eat and leave, I know that. But Chuck Kahn, maybe you have some explaining to do at dessert. Okay, I don't know, I'm just saying. Our president, Barack Obama, and the First Lady, Michelle, also wanted to be here. At the last minute, something else came up. There was a tribute dinner for a Reform rabbi. Unfortunately, the president will not be able to make it, but he promised he will send a drone in his place. If that happens, Hellman Auditorium is fortified. So if something like that happens, please, very carefully, just go out there. Finally, I can't believe this happened, President Putin of Russia actually called me. He read about that we were honoring you tonight, Rabbi, and he wanted to come here and say a few words. The problem was he also wanted Cherry Hill, and he also wanted TBS. And I said, "Niet," and that was the end of it. Something tells me that I'm going to be audited at the state and federal level for my taxes this year, if not wind up in a gulag. Anyway, a lot of work goes into a night like this, and I would like to thank the entire tribute committee for all their time and commitment in honoring and paying tribute to the rabbi. But there are a few special thank yous that I would like to call out. To Steve Bornstein for lighting up and creating great sound Not only at tonight's tribute, but at every TBS event, Steve has been my right-hand man on more than one occasion. To Ron Perlow for wonderful videos that you're going to see. Mike. No, I know Mike. Stephanie Kahn for her incredible attention to detail. Janet Rothstein, who wished she could be here tonight. Jamie, I was told, but who generously made the beautiful floral arrangements for the dinner. They were delicious. To Jessica Kopu for photography. Jessica. To Jill Hamill and Alex Weinberg, who go above and beyond to ensure that everything is perfect for tonight's evening. Believe me, it is their tireless efforts that makes everything go smooth. Finally, to our overall fundraising chair, Shirley Feigenbaum, who oversees everything and everyone. We are here tonight to honor our Rabbi Stephen Lindemann for 22 years of service to our congregation. Find yourself a rabbi and acquire for yourself a friend. For 22 years, he has educated the congregation. He has comforted us in need. He has presided over our weddings and our bat mitzvahs. He has led us to trips to Israel and now Eastern Europe, and he has provided innovative programming to both TBS and to the entire Jewish community. We honor the rabbi tonight as he becomes our Rabbi Emeritus in July, at which time our congregation will welcome Rabbi Michael Peltz as our new senior rabbi. Rabbi Lindemann, we thank you. Okay, enough with that. Full disclosure requires me to add that this is a night that Rabbi Michael Peltz thought would never get here. I can't tell you how many times Rabbi Peltz contacted me, Shirley, Steve Bornstein, anyone whose ear he could bend. You know, May 18th is a long way off. Can we just move this up a little? Okay, we know why we're here. We're here to honor Rabbi Lindemann. Let's go back in time, and it was 22 years ago that we started the process to find a new senior rabbi to replace our Rabbi Albert Lewis, who was then becoming our Rabbi Emeritus. I would like to tell you a little bit about the process for hiring a new senior rabbi, but before I do, let me just say this. For the sins which I am about to commit, okay. I had the great pleasure of being the vice chair of the search committee for the new senior rabbi. Art Simons, I know Art is here, was the chair. Let me tell you a word about being the vice chair. As my friend Art told me, you're not the co-chair, you're the vice chair. You only have authority if I am either out of town or on life support. And he did say that. His wife, Janet, was kind enough to share with me his medical records, most of which I will share with you later tonight on the screen. Art was quite healthy at the time, but I still accepted the appointment. Now remember, Rabbi Lewis had been our senior rabbi for about 45 years. We hadn't been in this situation before. We were in unknown territory. How do you find a senior rabbi? Art, as is his custom as an engineer, went to the blackboard and we compiled a list of qualities that we wanted in our rabbi, such as having neshama, have compassion, be charismatic, have the ability to speak and teach from the bima, and most of all, be a mensch. I don't know how we came up with these traits. We knew we were being a little picky and asking for a lot. Our committee was formed prior to Angie's List or Craig's List. No one wanted to use the Courier Post. How do you advertise for a mensch in the Courier Post? We went through a list of numerous rabbis that were provided to us by United Synagogue. We passed over most of them, but there were some excellent candidates, of course, including Rabbi Lindemann. Clearly, from the start, it appeared that Rabbi Lindemann was going to be our first-round draft choice. Rabbi, I know it may be a little inappropriate at this time, and especially tonight, but personally, my favorites were Rabbi Sharpstein and Rabbi Shapiro. Ladies and gentlemen, these were wonderful men. You would have loved them. Unfortunately, Sharpstein could not pass our physical. Shapiro had some legal and kashrut problems. Something about some crumbs that were found in his pocket. We couldn't wait. And by the way, Rabbi, although we didn't hire these men, thankfully, they've already had their tribute dinners from their congregation. But there was something about this rabbi from a small congregation in Virginia that interested us. He had a wonderful reputation from other rabbis that we highly respected. He had a terrific initial interview, even with that southern accent that he acquired at that small congregation in Virginia that he forgot to leave at the door when he met with us. You all provide medical? His blood test had some issues as well, but we were willing to overlook them. Now, after having had a beer with the rabbi at a hotel bar in Warsaw, Poland this past summer, I now realize why his blood test was so high in salted peanuts. He explained to me at that time and that night that he could eat them all day long. You remember that, okay? Now, I realize if I knew that at the time, we wouldn't have had to spend all that money on his first contract. We could have had him for peanuts. The way Rabbi Lindemann tells the story, we did. Anyway, we decided to invite him for a weekend at TBS. Okay. Those of you who are on the committee and were here for that Friday night know what I'm about to say. Rabbi is smiling here. Let's just say that the rabbi was somewhat animated on the beamer. Motion detectors were going off throughout the building, distracting both the rabbi and the congregation. Members of the House and Grounds Committee were in a panic. Police officers were rushing in. Some were even davening. I can also report, and the rabbi knows this, that he spoke somewhat fast that evening. Okay? Let's face it, for a first-round draft choice, you threw a few too many interceptions, Rabbi. Immediately after the services, the rabbi confessed that it was not his shining moment. Friends of his from Virginia, from the Virginia congregation, Beth Sholom, were here, and they were ecstatic because they thought that they would have the rabbi for a few more years. However, not everyone on the search committee was that disappointed. Rabbi Lindemann doesn't know this, but a few of us met after services, and there were some members, including Alvin Stern, who thought that the rabbi's pace was just fine. Quite frankly, the possibilities were endless. Shabbat morning services could end at 11 a.m. Every kiddush could be an extended kiddush. He could lead a synagogue seder and we'd get to the festive meal like that. However, right after the services, Rabbi Luvis and Rabbi Lindemann had a brief conversation. And contrary to the predictions of some members of the committee, the rabbi actually returned and did the Shabbos morning service. The rest, of course, is history. Now, on that Shabbos morning, we heard Rabbi Lindemann imitate Alan Sherman by davening. Mother, Father, kindly disregard Friday service. Canacone, where are you? I apologize. I didn't mean that. Okay. Now, we have a number of tributes tonight, but I would like to conclude and let you know what the committee really thought about Rabbi Lindemann. And let me read to you from a brief section of the report that Art Simon sent to the TBS president at that time, Eric Jacobs. My wife, Deanie, found it at the house. She doesn't throw at anything, quite frankly, which is why I'm still around. Okay. I did not contribute to this at all because I preferred Sharpstein, but. And let me read to you verbatim. Rabbi Lindemann was perceived by the committee as warm and friendly with an excellent sense of humor. He was especially sensitive to the issues attendant to following a senior rabbi of Rabbi Lewis's tenure and stature, about to become our Rabbi Emeritus, and inheriting a holdover younger associate rabbi, who was Rabbi Benjamin. Rabbi Lindemann comes alive when he is teaching, as he demonstrated so ably during Shabbat morning services. Notice how Art left out Friday night. Okay. Above all, he is eminently likable and approachable, a quality that TBS has grown to value highly these past 43 years. Rabbi Lindemann is an activist and believes that institutional outreach by the synagogue is a necessity. He believes that programming is his strong suit and views himself, that is the rabbi, as a role model and a leader. On halakhic issues, he stated that such decisions should take into account the needs of the congregation, which he recognized can only be learned over time. Quite frankly, I think our committee did a pretty good job. At this time, we have a short video with a little bit of background on Rabbi Lindemann.
Rabbi Lindemann and I both grew up in Easton, Pennsylvania, and we both attended B'nai Abraham Synagogue. I became bat mitzvah here on this very bima, right here in this very room, and as did Rabbi Lindemann.
Easton was a wonderful place to grow up, and I think partly because of the era, not just because of the place.
I became rabbi of the synagogue, B'nai Abraham Synagogue, in 1961, and my recollection is standing on the corner of 16th and Northampton Street. And there was young Stephen Lindemann standing on the street corner, just at an age just before his bar mitzvah. So I introduced myself to it, your new rabbi, and I talked to him about the possibility of his continuing his Jewish education after bar mitzvah. Stephen didn't seem to be slightest bit interested, but somehow we convinced him.
I arranged to teach him Hebrew, starting with the basic books and going on. And we had a deal. I would teach him and he would babysit. We did that for many years. And when he got to a certain point, I turned him over to my dear husband.
I fell in love with him as a teacher and with the study of the text in that way. And I went back as a 14-year-old to sit with kids in a Hebrew school class who were 11 in order to learn the Musaf service that I had not learned before then. And I would say by the time I was 15, I was sure I was going to be a rabbi.
I met Stephen in Camp Ramah in the Poconos in the 1960s.
I spent 14 summers on the staff at Camp Ramah in various capacities.
When Stephen and I got assigned to guard camping equipment at a far-off camping site, which had a refrigerator freezer with 50 pounds of veal in it, and we had to guard it for a week. So we figured veal, we might as well get some vodka. So we had veal and vodka for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a week. Stephen had his guitar, so we spent our time singing, chatting, drinking, and eating. I was honored, one of the few friends of Stephen to know his parents, Goldie and Carl. Carl was hearing impaired, very quiet, but really loved his kids very intensely. Goldie was a character, bigger than life, just a remarkable storyteller and weaver of tales. And if you listen to Stephen's sermons, you will hear that dramatic flair weave its way through whenever he speaks.
It was our first day of graduate school at Brandeis University. It was September of 1972, and here we were, a bunch of students who didn't know each other coming together into a program called Contemporary Jewish Studies. Our second year at Brandeis, a bunch of us were thrown together as student interns teaching at Kehillat Israel in Brookline, Massachusetts. Each of us somehow hoping to change and better Jewish life and working with these young kids and making them feel good about going to a Jewish afternoon school with all of the other activities that they had on their plate. There was Steve out there somehow connecting in a very special way with the young people, doing all kinds of innovative projects. Stephen, very much sensitive to the group dynamics of this 20-person group, kept quiet his relationship with another woman in the class who wound up being Jane Roberts. And I'll never forget that spring of 1973, when all of a sudden Steve and Jane announced that they were engaged. And we were like, what? We didn't even know you were dating.
When I was accepted to rabbinical school, I had a choice of either starting at JTS in New York or starting at the University of Judaism in California. And one of the individuals on my interview committee was Elliot Dorff, Professor Elliot Dorff, Rabbi Professor Elliot Dorff, who was at the University of Judaism. And he really suggested I give serious thought to coming to the UJ.
So they came out to LA. They had a magnificent little apartment right off Fairfax Avenue. They were 1 block from the kosher butcher, which meant obviously that rib steaks were main thing on the menu.
Steve was my student both in Talmud and in philosophy, and he was very adept and very acute, both in analyzing Talmudic arguments and in analyzing philosophical arguments and in creating new ones. So in addition to the warmth of his personality and his Jewish convictions, it was a delight to be his teacher and to be, frankly, pushed by some of his questions. If anything, I learned from him probably as much as he learned from me.
I have known Stephen and Jane since 1978, when Stephen and I both began rabbinical school at the University of Judaism. And Stephen and I, for 3 years together, studied Talmud and studied everything else together. We were a chavruta. It transformed from classmates in the course of those 3 years into friends.
But we came back to New York to finish at JTS, and it was a good experience. When I graduated, I looked at a number of different positions, and the one that I fell in love with immediately was Rabbi Sholom Temple in Hampton, Virginia.
Obviously, I was involved in my synagogue when I was growing up, but not to the level that I was involved at Rabbi Sholom. And I think that Rabbi was the spark for that.
I worked as the administrator for the synagogue for many, many years while Stephen was the rabbi. But we had all of our holidays together and all of our simchas together, and they were our best friends and our rabbi, our spiritual leader, and Jane was the education director.
It was a great place to be a rabbi. and I learned what it meant to work with a board, and I learned what it meant to work with various presidents of the congregation over time.
Stephen was more than just a rabbi. He was somebody you could go to talk to about anything. He was kind and smart and non-judgmental about anyone.
When Stephen left Virginia and moved to Cherry Hill, I was not surprised that at the ensuing smachot, the ensuing bar and bat mitzvahs, that members from that congregation would come up from Virginia to be part of the celebration. That's how much this particular rabbi is loved by his former congregants and his present congregants.
At this time, I'd like to call up three rabbis who really need no introduction to this bima. Rabbis Fred Benjamin, Rabbi Stephen Wernick, and Rabbi Joe Levinson. I can't believe you wore the same tie.
Alan.
Alan. I am so embarrassed.
Alan, you told me to wear this tie. I thought they were wearing it too.
The difference is that yours has a stain, a little stain over here.
Some things never change.
I'm going to start off. Can you put that picture back up? That picture stands on my desk in my office in our shul, Beth Sholom of the Blue Hills in Milton. I see it every day. Lichvod Sarah, I'm just going to take off my watch and check the time. There's a lot of truth in that picture for what it meant for us to be the support for Rabbi Lewis in those years, and for us to both know that we were valued in that role and that he valued us, not just the congregation, but that he valued us. But that picture also reflects a few more truths if you could just imagine people changing place. So if you will, imagine Steve Lindemann standing in the middle, with Rabbi Lewis on one side and myself on the other. That was very much true. It was our pleasure, it was our joy, it was our honor to be the support for you as you became the rabbi of this shul. And there's one more truth that I just want to share, and that is, if you would just imagine one more switch of place with me in the middle, having the support of Rabbi Louis Oliver Shalom and of you, Steve. You helping me to continue to become the rabbi that I could become. All those truths are there in that picture. And so I would just like you to help me right now say a phrase that means a lot for this partnership. It's one we finished the Torah reading with yesterday. So Steve, if you could just stand for a second. I'll say the first word. You know the second word. And we'll say the third word together. You all set? Okay. Chazak v'nid chazek. Toda.
So I guess we're going in order. You know, I remember when I first arrived in 1995, it suddenly dawned on me that Stephen was Stephen C., and I'm also Stephen C. He's Shmuel Chaim, I'm Shalom Chaim. And our personalities from the first Shabbat that Jody and I spent at your house when we were sitting on the floor, watching TV in like shorts and a t-shirt, and the dogs like climbing all over us, we knew a friendship was beginning, let alone an opportunity to work together and to become colleagues and friends. I want to share 3 things that I've learned from Steve Lindemann, from Rabbi Lindemann. The first is how to drink black coffee, only half a cup at a time, so it remains warm. The second is I've become an avid reader of the New York Times book section every Sunday. I remember once upon a time asking Rabbi Lindemann, how do you come up with all these really fantastic sermons? And he said to me, you're not reading enough. And so began a love affair with the New York Times book section and just nonstop reading, which of course turns into sermons that become book reviews of the bestsellers of the New York Times. But really, I think more than anything, it's that lesson that has propelled me in my career, just reading what's going on in the world and what other people are reading. And finally, the third thing of many things that I've learned from Rabbi Lindemann is how to be strategic and how to be authentic. I think Alan mentioned it. Steve is the real thing. Rabbi Lindemann is a mensch among menschen. He is likely one of the Lamed Vavniks, one of the 36 righteous people for whom the world continues to stand. He's principled, he's sensitive, he's smart, he's sincere. He is a rabbi's rabbi and a good friend. Yasher koach to you.
I don't think it's an accident that we are here in a period of time during which we count days, having started to count the Omer on the second night of Shavuot, the second night of Pesach until Shavuot. For Steve, as you taught us, it's more important than it is to count the days, it is to make your days count. It's to make your days count. And Steve, you do that, you've done that seemingly like a bonfire going on inside, like a Lag BaOmer bonfire going on inside. It's fueling you to go from minyan to the meeting and from the hospital to the chuppah. You've been there, I'm sure, for all of us in this room, and I know that for us personally. And so there's no other place in the world that I would want to be right now than to be here with you and with Jane and with your family and the congregation. You've been there for us. In times of sorrow, when we got married on this bima, to welcome our kids into the world, Sheer, Sam, and Gideon, 6.5, 5, and 2.5. That fire that burns inside of you is a fire that you have ignited inside of me, and that now I can take your Torah, my Torah, and together we can light up and change the world. But it started with you, Steve. For that we say thank you and Yasher koach.